What's up, guys? All right, we're back at the C4 Corvette. Unfortunately, we had a little bit of footage loss here of the radiator install and build. So what we've done here is we had some old tabs that had some holes cut out on it for 4-link. It was a tube going here, and then we got some rubber bushings here that pinches between the physical radiator here on that stud, and there's the same thing on both sides, as you can see, and then a piece of 1/4-inch plate going between the two, and then we used some square tubing here that the 1/2-inch bolt would actually slide into. So we'll weld this guy to here, and then we're welding this guy to here, and then when you unscrew this, it'll come out that bolt, and the radiator will come back. So this piece is all one piece, and then we got this piece that goes all the way down to another set of tabs down here. So, hang on, let me get you some better light going there. All right, so there we go. So same situation, same tab, and then we had a plate going across all the way over there. And the original air dam would come in kind of tiny in here, so what I did is actually just add this tiny thin plate here. Well, it's not really tiny, but thin. And it walked right down in there perfectly, as you can see. We will put a tab from here, like right here, so we can bolt that to there, and do the same thing over here. So we'll put a tab from here to here and bolt it on. But yeah, essentially that's a radiator in there. Now the one good thing is, on the radiator, we actually got lucky. Normally you got to custom build hoses and stuff, but that bad boy is going to work perfectly with the stock C6 hose. So we're going to have to do a little pushing. You know, it'll be a little bit of a tight fit, but once we push things over, push this over, we should be in pretty good shape. So, all right. And then, only thing we got to worry about is we're going to have to work on this guy right here. Now, we do have the spacing underneath there, and that's going straight towards that direction. So, you know, we can do a 90 off here, go down and do a 90 over, and then maybe a piece in a, what you do is just buy a couple pieces of hoses that have a little bitty turns or whatnot. See, this guy's more of a 45 degree, or really a 90, maybe a little bit 60 perhaps, but anyways. But it looks like it will go on to that right there and kick straight down, and then we'll cut this guy somewhere in here. And then we have another hose here that's got some slight curves that we can kick over. You know, just use this end, go up to it, and, you know, we might have to put another coupler in here. So we might have 2 couplers in this one. You just never really know. So that is not an uncommon factor. Sometimes you get lucky and you can cut up some old hoses and then go into the parts store and literally just say, hey, I need to find a hose just like this. And every once in a while you can actually kind of look at the hose right, because they just hang up all over the place. And you're in the parts store and you're sitting there going, you know, all over the place, and you basically get lucky every once in a while and land the perfect hose. So, all right, so we've got our radiator in here. We know our fan's going to work perfectly on that side. No problem. As you see, we got cardboard and duct tape all over everything to protect it, which I kind of go over some of that in a tech tip if you guys are interested. And then we got to get our intercooler in here and our transmission, AC condenser in here. So I do have the AC condenser here, and I will be able to just kind of set that in place. We will be custom building lines for this guy, but the ground's in the way at the moment. But we're gonna have that sitting up, you know, pretty close to the height of that. But we don't want to get too high, because we need to keep the room there for that guy right there, so we can come across here and down into the intercooler that's gonna be right there. Now, on one side of the intercooler, we're gonna be running a pretty heavy-duty little 7-inch fan, and let's see, 7 inches doesn't sound like much, but we do have this wonderful hole right here that this guy just kind of lines up with perfectly. So it'll be down in there, and then the intercooler will be right in front of it, and then everything else will be blowing through that, and we'll have a 16-inch behind that pulling air through everything. So we got one literally like pulling air directly from the hole that's in the middle of the bumper there. We still have all the air coming through the very front also, so that's getting scooped up right in there. So I think this guy might actually breathe pretty good. And the one benefit we got is with the fan right there in between here, it's pushing the air, the hot air, literally down and under the vehicle. In these Corvettes, one of the biggest things is all that heat transferring across the engine. It gets trapped in there sometimes, and it goes through the trans tunnel, and it literally just feels like you're radiating heat. You could cut your, I mean, it gets so hot in these cars sometimes that you can cut your heater off, and the heat radiating through the transmission tunnel literally will warm you up in the winter times. Not obviously super cold winters, but you get the idea. So this will definitely help on that, because I mean, you don't want that in the summer. So and this guy definitely loves Florida, so he's down there quite a bit. So we want to make sure he stays nice and cool. But that's where we're at there. We've got the transcooler physically welded, or excuse me, physically protected. I've got some old transmission mounts that I just had that happen to have slots that'll work out perfectly for this thing. So I know the distance between the rail is 28 3/4 of an inch, 28 7/8, you know, basically between the two. A little bit of a gap's good, so we got movement. So literally when I measure from here to here, that gives me almost perfect. So I'm going to get a cutting wheel and just hack those off real quick, get a nice straight cut on those, and then we'll walk it over there and try to see if we can't aim this guy and this guy, which goes up to, or excuse me, which comes is being fed from the turbo. So the turbo's coming down and actually going to here. So once we get this in place, we are on the head of turbos at this point. That's the only thing we got left that's big that has to get in there. Everything else is small and piping and all those sorts of things. So we just kind of work ahead, think ahead, and worst case, you know, just tack everything in place so that way you can unassemble, weld it all up really good, and then reassemble it after it's welded. When you're doing that, just keep in mind heat and distortion. So, but I'm going to go ahead and get that cut up, get those trimmed up, and tape off the bottom where I missed a couple tiny spots, which they probably never will touch anything, but hey, a couple seconds, 2 cents of tape, why not? We'll just get it right. And get her trimmed up, and then we'll start back at the car. So talk to you in a second. Alright, so I've got the intercooler all taped up, and you know, everything's ready. I got the couple spots finished in. And essentially I'm just, I kind of set it in there, trimmed the little brackets a little bit. Here, I'll show you. So we just trimmed those up a little bit on each side. I've got them bolted down pretty snug, and I know that it fits between the rails, but we know how we're going to go from here up to that. No problem. What we got to figure out is how our turbos are going to get that over here to the intercooler. So, on that note, move some of this stuff out of the way. We got this little hole right here that you can see on both sides. Right there and right there. Now this is the old reservoir, we don't need that. We're going to move the new one up there somewhere, and that way it's highest. So we're going to have to route that. They'll aim in here and then come out here. We'll have to move all this wiring out of the way. It's just laid in here. And headlight power unit there. So we'll come up probably here, and then boom is the idea. So turbos, boom, down, hooking around. So what we're going to do is trim away some of this material that's going to get in our way to keep the piping low, because we do have our headlights that are going to be down in the hole down in here some. So once we get through and get around, we'll be okay. So, and with the turbos up there hugging the control arms, the tires don't actually come nowhere near that. So we'll be okay. We'll have literally 3-4 inches around most of the areas there. So ideally you want to have 1 inch of spacing minimum. And then of course we got turbo blankets and wrap and all that stuff, which, you know, we'll decide if we're going to wrap them or not later, because that tends to actually hold heat in. Heat actually has been known to actually affect the power and so on and so forth. So, but anyway, so that's where we're at. We're going to get these pieces, these little areas trimmed out in the bottom here. Let's see. Sorry guys, got to have 2 hands on this one. Give us some clearance down here. We got the welder running, sorry about that, but we need it. Make sure there's no wiring or anything in the way. Looks good. Take this off, get some better clearance. Alright, now, I don't know if you saw my videos before, but that's a diamond cut blade basically, and it makes very easy work of plastics and ABS and stuff like that. Alright, so we got all that removed out of there. And that does it nice and clean, and it doesn't vibrate everything out of your all over the place. There we go. I'll let you take a quick look at that. So you'll see what I did. So we made just a little clearancing there. Now we're still going to mill these taps here to hold this piece in place, because the only thing it's got right now is this one. And we got that one now too. So tons of room. So ideally we're going to aim those 2 pipes right there at that. So we're going to have that guy right there. So that guy right there and there aims at those 2 spots. So, and we'll work the rest of it out. Alright. I'm going to go find a couple tabs I can weld down in here real quick to bolt those plastic pieces in place, and we'll get the intercooler going. Alright, so I just went and finished cutting up some of the parts that I had for my transmission mount tabs that is going to hold our intercooler. Yeah, conveniently have some holes, so I'm just going to land those bad boys down here against this plastic. What I'll do is I'm going to push that outward so it doesn't block any air, and then it'll also be able to pull up better too, so once we get that fixed. So, alright. third arm here. Yes, with that plastic behind there, definitely does not like the heat. That's just how it goes. So those right there. Okay. Do some trimming later. Alright, that looks good. So nice and simple, nothing too crazy. See, just a couple tabs in there. We'll drill some holes right through those into the plastic. Of course, we want to make sure that the bottom section is in line before we do that. It might need to be trimmed up a little bit to fit better, but looks good so far. Alright. So we got the intercooler. It's nice and snug in here a little bit. Oop. And see, look, I dropped it. If I didn't have that protective layer on there, that would have been bad. So I'm just kind of looking at where I'm going to land. So since I don't have anybody here to hold it for me, what I'll do is just grab a box or something and kind of, hopefully it's not too thick, it probably is, but we'll try. Set this down in there. Front. Oop. That probably. And there we go. Bring this side up and out. We'll try to find another box to stick in there. I don't have a box, but I got a piece of 2x4 here. Alright. So I like the height of that on this side. So what I can do, I like where the bottom's at too. So what I can do is just tack weld the little tiny spot in the corner here and then just pull this side up to where I want it and tack weld that. before I do that, I'm going to protect this trans cooler. Get that down there. Alright. Put that right there. Okay. Box move, that's what happened. Yeah, see, things move. Things adjust. You know, I think I'm gonna find two longer boxes for both sides, or maybe some 2x4s or something. That'll. And there's when the intercooler comes in handy, being wrapped up. And that, my friends, is exactly why we have all this wrapped on there. Now granted, if you have a second person to give you a hand at this moment in time, that's going to be your best bet, of course. You know, I unfortunately do a lot of this at night, so that way I can, you know, record all this for you guys. So it's just how it goes. We do what you got to do, right? It's not a big deal. We learn. I think that actually right there will stop it from falling through again. It actually pushes it up high enough, possibly. That might actually work. Let's see if we can get some cardboard. Cover the rest of that. All right. And just, you know, do what you gotta do. Not a big deal. Whatever it takes to get the job done. Stay. Alright, let's see how that works. This side actually looks really good. Bring it up a little bit. Alright, so I'm going to try to pull this side up and tack it just nicely. Nothing's too crazy that I can't work it out later. spacers out. Cardboard for a second. I wanted all that gap in there just in case we change that AC condenser setup or something else. So we're going to lower, I want to lower this other side a little bit. So we'll cut those tacks back out. Because it looks like we can change the gaps up a bit more so we can get this side down a little bit lower. Not too much, because we really don't want to have to fight the curve here. Nor do we want to have to dimple anything to clear anything. So. But I want to get this side a little bit lower so that when we start down on here, it comes up and clears things better. So gives us more room, more range away from these headlights that are going to be in these pockets. Alright, so hopefully get the grinding wheel down in there, we'll see. If not, we'll just have to get the cutting torches and just kind of play at that a little bit. Oh, and one thing I forgot, people forget about these tools, but a chisel is one of your best friends sometimes. There's no space, so you get your chisel in there and hammer that bad boy. Sorry if it's loud, guys, but oh look, yep, sweet. And voila, you are out. Alright, so let me grab my gloves and helmet. No major chaos there. Lift that back up in the place where we want it and tack her again. This is carbon right here. Check this side real quick. Tilt actually pulls. Alright, slowly let go. If it's hot, it'll twist on you and move. Alright. Yeah, it looks pretty good. I don't think we're going to have any issues there. What do you guys think? Look good down in there. Same thing. We got our clearance. Looks like that plastic might be pretty close, but it's just a coupler right through there, so we could always trim away that if we need to. And let's see. Shoot, we almost have enough room for a whole fan in there, don't we? and the intercooler is a little crooked, so but yeah. And then that air is going to go directly right into the fins of that bad boy. Shoot, we could actually probably put the fan right attached to the intercooler right there. And we've got a nice good flow there. I think we look good. Alright, so we're going to go ahead and tack those pieces in just a little bit better. That way they don't twist. Put this over here on this side. So we can tack weld that first. For some reason it's a little harder to get to. Remember, always tack your stuff up, keep tacking, never truly weld it in until you know you're like final, because like in this case, this angle right here, if we could twist this just a little bit later when we're running the piping up top, could mean a night and day. So, I'm gonna keep all my tacks high on it. Look at that, how's it gonna be enough of my board over. Alright, well there we go. See? We got a little bit of movement there, but not much. We'll have to probably put a plate from the frame rail down to the bottom side to give it a little support on the bottom, because it's so far up, but that's not a big deal. Just get a little extra leg space on that, or a support leg I should say, not space. So right there, since we only have this little bit on the rail that we're going to be able to weld, we'll probably take a plate from here and then weld it from here to here, and that'll grab that, and should work out really nicely. Hopefully you could see that. Yeah, just a little weld from here to here, so on both sides, and then we should be good. So we got a little bit of flex here, but not much, and looks like we're ready to start figuring out our pathway for the turbos. All right, so here goes the heavy fun part. So we grab those guys and just kind of hold them up in the air and see what looks best, so we can design our headers around it. Now originally we were gonna actually do the turbos headers with a truck style intake, or excuse me, exhaust manifold, but Corvettes are notorious for space problems, especially the C4. It's even worse, because the stuff we use today is much bigger and thicker and heavier. So, or not today, but even in 2000s versus the 90s. So, getting this much motor in here, plus all this other stuff, plus the exhaust, plus tubing, plus your blow-off valves, all your other components is definitely a fun scenario. So we essentially have to move a lot, trim out a lot, clearance a lot, as you saw with the rear end if you saw our 9-inch conversion part of this video segment. But it takes quite a feat sometimes to get all this in here. I mean, this project ultimately will be months to get done, but you don't rush it. You don't push it too far. You do what you got to do, and make sure it's right. That's the one thing that matters, because the last thing you want to do is have one tiny little thing mess up everything. And it happens, guys. It's going to happen for sure. So, oh, excuse me. But so slowly work the process, you know, strategically plan out every little thing that you can, try to remember everything, you know, using a board or a check off list, you know, and you know, always go with your biggest stuff and get all that in place first. It's just, you know, a huge help to find all this stuff. I mean, I've got other things that I've still got to figure out, like the AC stuff, you know, where you still got to get all this into place. These metal lines, unfortunately, you know, they're meant for the other setup, so they're not going to work very well for this. And I have the ability to cut and customize these hoses and stuff, but the original connection points for some of your stuff needs to be reproduced. So you can't just walk out there most of the time and just grab everything you need perfectly. So you got to customize all that too, unless you pay somebody in an AC shop a whole bunch of money. I don't know about you, but I'd rather spend about $250 to buy a hose kit, plus all the parts and pieces and some hose connectors and a hydraulic crimper. So probably end up like $350 maybe. You go to AC shop, it'll probably end up costing you $500-600 or more sometimes. So, all right, well, we're gonna wrap it up today for the intercooling radiator stuff, and then we're gonna jump into the turbos. I'm gonna probably stand here and look silly with the turbos for a little while until I figure out what I want to do. I'm probably going to end up trimming away some of the inner fender well, stuff like that. That way I know. And I'm of course going to bring a wheel in here, set it in place, make sure my clearances are good, turn them in and out so I know that's good. And then the worst part of all is when you bring the hood over and try to get it back down. We kind of already know we're going to run with a scoop in the center and the back, because I mean, that alternator is definitely up in the air. Let's see. It's sitting higher than the intake. Gotta love it. But we can't move it anywhere, you know, left or right. And honestly, most guys don't have air conditioning. So we have air conditioning down there, and that's where the AC, where our alternator typically would be. So we put the alternator down there, and then we still have our clearance for our turbos. Sorry about that, guys, but anyways, I appreciate you guys tuning in. This is Jeremy, Chaos Garage, and we'll see you in a bit.